We've all heard the stereotype that black fathers amongst all other races are the most absent in the lives of their children, thereby making black fathers the poster boys for deadbeat dads. But is there a truth to that stereotype? What constitutes a deadbeat dad? We'll talk about that and much more. Stay tuned to Brothers in Fatherhood podcast. Welcome to the Brothers in Fatherhood podcast, the show that is by black fathers for black fathers. I'm Apollo. Today we're talking about the stereotype that black fathers are deadbeat dads. Where does the stereotype come from? Is there some validity to the argument? If so, how do we change the narrative and the culture? Today we have Joe, Alfred, Tedman, and Cleve. Brothers, let's start the conversation. Is there a stereotype when it comes to black fathers as deadbeat dads? According to the article from apnews.com titled Single Black Fathers Fight Deadbeat Dad Stereotype by Raleigh Sattar, if I'm pronouncing that right, the second, from the Milwaukee Neighborhood News Service. He describes in his article the number of single father households have increased from less than 300,000 in 1960 to over 2.6 million in 2011. According to a report by the Pew Research Center, from which black fathers are the most likely to be the heads of the single father household, beating out their white and Hispanic fathers, according to the report. Also in the same article, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, about 24 million children in America live without their biological father. So understanding that it's a more of a systemic issue, a U.S. issue, not a wholly specifically a black community within the U.S. issue. It's an overall U.S. issue. And then according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which we know as HUD, they put out reports that says that children without fathers in the home have a greater risk of poverty and are more likely to abuse of drugs and alcohol and more likely to drop out of high school, which leads to more likely to end up in prison. So does all that stuff sound familiar? Is that indicative of the black community and some of the inherent problems that we have within the last couple decades? So I'll open it up for discussion.
You know, I'll start it first. I kind of want to just read two paragraphs from that I was looking at on a blog called Fatherly, which can actually also bring this topic. So just to give you a little bit more, and it's kind of similar to what you said too, Apollo, but it's a little one. So it says, of the roughly 36 million men who fathered the 74 million American children under the age of 18, about 9 million do not live with all of their minor children, most or all of the time. Several million more see their kids at least once a week. 5 out of 6 single-parent households are headed by women, and the percentage of kids living only with their mothers has tripled between 1960 and 2016 to 23%. The number of custodial fathers have also grown, but to little more than 2 million. All told, half of U.S. children will spend at least 2 years living in a one-parent home. Some will never or barely know their fathers. And fatherless children are much more likely to do poorly in school, act out, abuse drugs, and commit crime. I'll leave that there. And this actually came from a website called fatherly.com. With this particular topic, it'd be good to kind of get some research from someone else's perspective, but then also, give a little of my background as well. I would basically say, to me, a deadbeat, if you're talking about deadbeat, it's kind of basic if you really think about it. If you're not showing up as a father and you actually have kids, then that's the easy definition, the simple definition of being a deadbeat daddy. You're not there. You do have kids, but you don't contribute at all. There's no form of equality when it comes to actually raising your kids. You basically just seeded that particular child and you went away. Now, I see a lot of this, and when I was younger, I've actually probably had that same mindset. You know what I mean? Like it's like a one night stand, for example. If somebody gets pregnant, that you messing with in a one night stand, you really don't want to have nothing to do with that woman because you don't even know her, right? So if you are 18, let's say 22-year-old, you don't even have the mindset to be like, this is kids. What you talking about? Like, you're not even really thinking it. As we get older, and it's to me, if you hit that age of probably 24, 25, somewhere around there, you are aware, you know what I mean, what it means to actually have a child and what it means to actually step up and actually raise that particular child. But it's being taught, you know what I mean, so much. My dad, I didn't live with him, but it's a thin line to where you can say he was a deadbeat, and then you can also say he wasn't. And what I mean by that is this: in his mind, he paid child support to my mom to actually provide for me. And he worked to pay child support. So I think 25% of his income had to go to me. It was roughly around $350. Now, the village, his particular family, they all raised me. So although my dad was not always in my life, right? In my mind, he wasn't a deadbeat, but he was borderline. He was borderline because he never taught me much. You know what I mean? I had to learn from other men, for example.
Joe,
did. Yeah.
Let me ask you: Is there a difference between deadbeat and absent father? Go ahead.
So let's. I didn't want to jump in and say anything yet. I was going to let Joe finish his thought.
I just want to know.
But you're spot on, Cleve. So is there a difference between a deadbeat and an absent father? And then understanding that, do we need to define what a deadbeat is? Because you can be financially present, right? And like Joe was saying with his father, he provided financially for him. But is that enough?
No.
You know what I'm saying? So is that enough for the child in response to actually raising them and child rearing and all that good stuff, teaching them lessons? Is the monetary stimulus that you're providing for your responsibility enough? Or do you still qualify them as a deadbeat dad or at least an absentee dad when it comes down to it? So finding what to you is a deadbeat dad, and then let's define what an absent dad, because you could easily say a lot of fathers are absent, but they do pay their child support.
Right. I would say, to me, when I look at it, a deadbeat dad is someone who's just not there at all. You know, you don't even know him. You know what I mean? He doesn't raise any of his kids. He has multiple kids, and he ain't paying no child support. He's not even there. An absent dad, clearly they're around, but they're absent. They don't live there, but they do monetarily, or financially provide. That's at least my part of that definition. But so I think they're both.
Do they actually? So when you're talking about absent, is it only financially that they're there? Do they show up at those critical life moments like birthdays, graduations, teaching you how to drive? Are they there for those particular moments and not for anything else? Or where are we drawing the line?
I would say you would draw that's, to me, still absent. If you're only showing up on special occasions like a friend, for example, you still absent. To me, a father that's not absent, you showing up on a daily basis or a weekly basis, at least a conversation. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be every single day. If I was let's just say if I was not in a situation I was in and I had four or five kids and I wasn't married, I would at least be on the phone with my kids 2 to 3 days a week, at least. I'm never too busy to get on the phone and talk to my kids. So in my personal, I would be on the phone with them every day at some point for at least 4 to 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, having a conversation with them. So if you can't set aside time, if you do not live with your kids to speak with them over the phone to see how their day was going for 5 to 10 minutes a day, then you're absent, because it's 24 hours in a day. You mean to tell me that you can go to work for somebody else, you can call somebody else, make sure they're cool, you can get on the phone with your homie, but you can't call your kids to just kind of see what was going on with them because you have this disagreement with their mother? That you're absent. You know what I mean? Now, that doesn't really mean that you're a deadbeat, but you're not there. If you're only setting aside 1 to 2 days a week or twice a month or 4 times a year to actually show up, you kind of both. You know what I mean? But it's definitely arguable. But in my opinion, you're absent. You know what I mean? If you're only showing up on special occasions, you're only providing, here's $100 for your birthday every single year, but you ain't at no football game as I get older. You're not at no sports event. You're not asking me how school. You're not trying to help me. You're a deadbeat and you're absent, really. But definitely the definitions are different. But I think you're a deadbeat if you don't do anything, period. You don't provide financially. You're not there. It's as if you don't even have kids, but you're the dad. And there's a lot of men like that. You know what I mean? But if you're absent, that just means like, look, I'm going to go ahead and take care of you. Here's the money. A lot of athletes do that. You know what I mean? At least from the media standpoint. You'll see a lot of athletes who have kids and they'll just say, okay, well, I'll just pay the child support, but I really don't want to have anything to do with the kids because I didn't even know the mom. You know what I mean? And that's how that particular conversation starts. So they're providing financially like all hell, and I think that's the reason why child support got started in the first place, really.
People, you know what I mean? It forces somebody to take care of their responsibilities.
Exactly.
So what you got, Cleve? I see you over there chomping at the bits. What you got?
No, you know what, man? This is touchy for me, man. Touchy, and it's not because I'm one or I just grew up in the household, like probably like Joe, where my father wasn't in the picture. I had a stepdad and things of that nature. A lot of support around me, but I guess to clarify, for me, it's a difference between a deadbeat and an absent father. A deadbeat to me is the financial portion that comes into play. The one that does not pay, does not do these things. And the absent father is the guy who just pays, but just is not there. So that's how I distinguish the two for myself. Because it's oftentimes where a gentleman may have a son with somebody who doesn't know, doesn't like the mother, does not, just pays the money and doesn't deal with the kid. But he has another set of kids that he's a perfect father to.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I can't really call him a deadbeat. I can just say he's an absent father.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's how I distinguish the two. But those are questions that I'm listening to when I hear Joe say he's not there, he's not doing this. Is that still considered a deadbeat? I actually think the term deadbeat came from a woman, so forgive me. I think it's like when they start something off by saying a real man. Once you hear the real man, that came from a woman. Because I think all men are men, period. You know what I mean? It's just you have levels to each man. So, but each man is a man. So I'll take that. But that's where I'm trying to gauge you guys' opinions on it. Let's start by giving a
definition.
Definition.
Absolutely.
And what everybody's expecting before we proceed to kind of
dissect this conversation.
It's like what we're looking for.
So we're talking about deadbeat dads and trying to define how you see a deadbeat dad throughout terms of deadbeat versus an absent father. So where's your take on it?
To me, a deadbeat is a person that one is not there, doesn't contribute, but is also not doing anything for himself. If you can't do for yourself, you can't do for your kids. It's something that I speak to people with all the time. I would go to the ends of the earth. I would do what I needed to do to make sure that my kids were okay. That emotionally, spiritually, financially. Not all absentee fathers to me are the ones that only give money. It's the inverse. If you own, there's two sides to the equation. Kids need to be taken care of. But what did Big Boy say? Hope don't float on water, right? If you don't contribute anything past, I can be emotionally spectacular, but if I leave the finances to the woman or my partner, what am I doing? I'm only giving half. I'm raising an emotionally confident and respected person, but I'm not teaching them the value of education, of money, of self-reliance. I'm not teaching that, because if I am always there for you emotionally, but I don't contribute anything else, I then become dependent on you for everything, including those emotions. And that's what a lot of people don't talk about when they talk about absenteeism and fatherhood. I know women that say, hey, don't give me any money, just be there for the kids. That's great. The problem with that is that if you are not able to contribute the way it is necessary for everybody to live and be fruitful, then that doesn't do anything. So, and it doesn't teach your children how to manage life, because you need money. You need money to live.
So
everybody does.
So just to clarify, so you're saying your definition of a deadbeat is that deadbeats just don't contribute, period. So they can, period. So, and then an absentee father is somebody that may contribute a portion of what a father's supposed to contribute, but they're lacking in some way at some type of portion of it, either financially or emotionally. They're not there. Some portion is missing from what it means to be a father.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. And it's a major portion. Like everybody lacks in something, but there are a few things that nobody would argue is absolutely instrumental in raising a child. And if you're absent in any of those ways significantly, then what are you doing?
I think it's changed over time. We talked about this in our first episode. How does your upbringing influence how you parent? I think it was Joe that brought up that, hey, the standard has changed. The goalpost has been moved from the generation where our parents came into play, raising us to where we're at now. Us as Black fathers, we're expected to do a lot more than our fathers did. So our fathers were mainly responsible for putting food on the table and a roof over our head and clothes on our back, and they were good to go. They got thumbs up. But with us and this new generation, we are expected to do a lot more as fathers, even though statistics will show you that there's a lot more single parent homes. But as fathers, we're expected to do a lot more. And as parents, we're expected to do a lot more. So teach, friend, and the whole nine, we're expected to do all that when it comes to child rearing. And because of that, you can even say that there's a lot more things that a father is expected to do. Now, if the standard has been raised, if we fall short, according to your definition, if we fall short really in any one of those things, we're measured against a lot higher standard than our forefathers. The deadbeat dad, absentee dad measure or requirements are a lot easier to obtain now because we're expected to do a lot more, if that makes any sense. So we kind of, without Alfred jumping in and see that he's dropped off, but the definition from everybody's kind of take on it in regards to a deadbeat dad is kind of saying you're just not present. You're just not there. You don't provide anything whatsoever. And there could be a number of ways that contributed to that, either a one night stand or something like that. You didn't really know the person. You don't want to be involved whatsoever. And you're taking it out on that child that, essentially your responsibility to take care of. And you're distancing yourself. You're not involved whatsoever. I think you hear that in the deadbeat dad type of thing within our pop culture now, right? You've seen it in movies. You hear it in stand-up comedy, TV shows. One of my favorite comments, he says he's biracial. He said, yeah, my mom's white. My dad is unpresent. You know what I mean? So it's ingrained in the Black community that, Black fathers typically aren't present, aren't there. So that's where I believe the stereotype comes from. And now that it's ingrained over several generations, I want to say starting back in the 50s, 60s era, where it became a lot more commonplace to see a Black mother by herself raising kids, as opposed to seeing a dual family, both a male and a female raising children, right? So now that it's commonplace and it's within our community, it's unheard of almost to see the opposite. What Joe was saying, an episode ago, Joe, that, you were in the, that was something different, but you were in the airport with all your kids, right? Unheard of. And say, wait, what is this Black father doing with kids? I mean, are you okay? Is something wrong? Oh, he's in the military. So therefore, if he's in the military, he knows what the right thing looks like. Therefore, he's taking care of his kid. So
that's so rare. It's so rare, Apollo, not to cut you off. It's so rare that one time I saw a dad with 8 kids, and they were all girls. He was walking down the street.
Oh,
it was so rare to see him. I pulled over to ask the dude if he needed anything, because I couldn't believe it. You know what I mean?
Black father?
It was a Black father. He was a youngster. He was in his 20s. And you could tell he didn't have a whole lot. He was walking, and they were all walking with him. But he had his head on his shoulders, but you could just tell he was struggling financially just from the appearance. I don't know if he was or not, but his clothing, that kind of thing. All of the girls though looked like they were nice. Their hair was done up, the whole 9 yards. He was looking pretty bad. And I said, "Hey man, these are your kids?" And he's like, "Yeah." I said, "All of them?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Man, you need it? I mean, y'all need a ride?" Or, I had to, because I could not believe it. You know what I mean? I went back, told my wife, like, "Man, I saw this little youngster. He had 8 kids. They were all girls." And he was literally, I didn't ask him where he was going or nothing like that, but I had never seen that. I've never seen that, not with that many kids. And he was just like, "No, I take care of all of them." And the conversation could have continued to me, to get nosy, but I didn't want to, go there, because how the hell you taking care of all these kids? You don't even look like you can even take care of yourself. That was my next thought, but I didn't do that. It was just, it amazed me to where I never forgot it. And that was probably, you talking 3 or 4 years ago. Till this day, I drive sometimes looking to see if I'm going to see that dude, because the story this is in San Francisco.
Wow. So he in one of the most expensive cities in the United States, in the world, and
with 8
kids?
girls. With 8 girls, and he was walking by himself, and he was walking to the grocery store. And it was just like, he to me, That was like his thing was like, I'm gonna do whatever I can. You know what I mean? People were hunking the corn and everything. He wasn't matching and it wasn't none of that. He wasn't trying to, make a scene, none of that. He was trying to get to the grocery store to take care of his kids. I didn't ask him anything. Where's the mom? None of that. But it just stuck in my mind like, wow, you know what I mean? This dude is really doing it. And at that time, I think I only had 2 or 3. You know what I mean? But you can learn a lot from some people, and a lot of times it's surprising to see that, especially in the community that I live in. To kind of see that, it's very rare. But I often ask myself, when did this start? Like you said, this kind of started in the 50s or 60s. I think that's debatable. If you go back to the early 1900s, I feel like Black families were together. You know what I mean? So especially when it comes to my family, they were 14. I had large families. I come from very large families, and they were migrating from the South, normally Texas, Mississippi, things like that, to come over to California. Now, from the history I got, at least from my side of my family, they came over during that Dust Bowl area. Mm-hmm. So that 1940s, they were married. They had kids. The father was there. My grandfather was in my life. My grandfather was actually in my life a lot more than my dad was, which surprised me that my dad is the way he is. Not a bad person, but he was not there. And it's weird because he did not grow up in a single parent home like I did. You know what I mean? So I often ask myself, what happened here? You know what I mean? My dad was raised by his mom and his dad. His dad moved from Arkansas to come to California to start a business, something that most Black men did not do in the 40s at all. He left Arkansas from a plantation in 48, came to California, started a business by 55, all while having 3 kids at the same point in time and marrying my grandmother. And then my dad actually grew up working in the particular cafe that my grandfather ran. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And then he actually had a side business to where after hours, he would actually turn his household into a gambling shack. And then they would actually gamble. So they were doing the things that we were, accustomed to seeing in movies like Harlem Nights and stuff like that. My grandfather was a businessman. That didn't really get passed down to my father for whatever reason. Now he was a good person, but as far as raising his family, I guess he just didn't really figure that out. But it was the tribe that was there to actually raise me. My dad actually told me myself, I knew you were mine, but I still made your mom take a paternity test.
Jesus Christ.
He told me straight up, just straight up. Like I knew you were, but I didn't claim you until the blood came back. And in my mind, I was just like, what kind of shit is that? You know what I mean? Like, come on, bro. And even my grandmother was like, knew it from the get go. Oh, that's
hell, you look just like him. So I don't understand.
And this is not 2 or 3 months after. This is 6 to 1 year, 6 months to a year after. Oh, so that's what I'm saying. When the maternity test, had to wait, that's not mine. And everybody in the family saying like, Joe, come on, man. You know damn well he looked identical to you. Get out of here. So you know what I mean? But as he got older, then things became cool. And there's 2 stories before I pass the mic. There's 2 stories I always relate to. One was Kevin Hart. The other one was Offset from Amigos, to where their dad wasn't in their life, but then once their dad got into their life, they accepted him. And I kind of took that particular Offset situation was this. Dad was never in his life, right? And he went on a radio show and said, I want to break bread with him. You know what I mean? He wasn't there. I don't really know him. You know what I mean? And when the dad came around, they interviewed Dad. Dad broke down crying. He didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? And then Offset was like, man, at this particular point, it ain't no big deal, bro. I want to get you situated. You know what I mean? He didn't even know him. But the fact that he was his dad, he still gave that man 6 figures to get him a house, to get him situated so that he can be in his kid's life. He was like, forget that you wasn't in my life. Now it is what it is, man. Let's go talk. Let's go do this. And certain men won't do that no more. Kevin Hart was his story was pretty similar. You know what I mean? Dad still wasn't there. He had a brother. But now if you go and watch the episode of that Netflix special we did, his dad coming around asking for $20,000, $30,000. He just like, here, no problem. That's very difficult for somebody to do when that particular person was never there. It's very difficult, especially if you're a deadbeat. Now, you can consider, based on those stories, that those were deadbeat fathers, just based on the particular story that was actually portrayed. Yet, the actual child forgave. You know what I mean? And it's because that person it was there. And there wasn't any steps There was no stepdads in the equation. You know what I mean? I grew up. The reason why I told myself that I'm not going to be a deadbeat father or absent it's not because of my dad. It's really because of my friend's dad. That's Roy Stingman. And I tell every single person that he was my coach. He was our coach, actually, at some point. But I would study him and see what he would do with the 5 kids he had. And he always used to talk about how he wanted to actually, his mission was to get all of his 5 kids into college so they can go off and actually be successful. I never knew about none of that. We wasn't talking about college in Hanford. It just wasn't a thing, at least when I was growing up on the South Side part of that. That wasn't a topic. These were gangsters. These were players, hustlers. They wasn't talking about college. College wasn't a thing like that until probably we got into high school, to where you see, you can go on to play sports and stuff like that. But if you were in the neighborhood just kind of chopping up with your friends, nobody in the 90s was talking about going to college and doing this. Not where I grew up at least. It just wasn't a thing. You know what I mean? But when we got around individuals like Alfred, like you, Apollo, like Saad, and we shifted our focus, then we started to, talk about college and things we wanted to do. But when we were growing up, like in junior high and stuff like that, to me, I just don't remember us sitting around saying, I can't wait till I get into college, you know what I mean, so I can do X, Y, Z. It really wasn't on our plates like that. We weren't really tripping off that, and we didn't have that person saying, you guys need to do this. When you get into high school, you need to do X, Y, Z in order for you guys to have a successful life, succeed, have a family, and do this. Not even from my dad. I don't recall it being from anyone, but I always remember it from Roy because he already knew, what to do. And he was a working class man. He didn't have a college degree, but he just knew all the way. I'm going to actually get all 5 of my kids into college, and I'm going to pay for them. He didn't care about financial aid or nothing. And he did it. You know what I mean? He did it with the exception of Jason, because Jason didn't want to do it. But Jason still ended up having a successful career at what he's doing. All the rest of the 4 went to college, graduated college, and they're off doing great things for themselves. So I told him that. I was like, before you pass on, I want to let you know, man, that you actually shaped my life. You know what I mean? And when it comes to looking at someone who's like a father, a dad, he was like the person I always used to look up to.
Yeah, I think it's vitally important to give people their flowers while they're here, as opposed to honoring them while they're gone.
While they're gone, right.
So I definitely agree. So we kind of defined the definition of a deadbeat dad. So now that we have the definition, do you believe in the stereotype of Black fathers being deadbeats? The overgeneralization of the stereotype that, hey, Black fathers are deadbeat.
In the current climate, I don't think it's as high as it was. I do think, I think I've heard it. I hesitate to kind of go all the way into it, but I've heard stories of how, I guess you can call it conspiracy theories, whatever you want to call them, of how back when the 80s, 70s type of frame, that the government started to give aid to women for being single or whatever, and that kind of pushed them into an independent world to where it was like, okay, if I have this and get these benefits, we're already doing bad together, where I can do bad by myself, but get this aid from the government. And I think that kind of pushed women to kind of want to not be in that situation, not be in a bad situation, or making a bad situation worse. And I think a lot of Black fathers were actually pushed out. I do agree with the narrative a little bit. They were kind of pushed out a little bit. But now I think, as far as like a guy like myself or Joe or you, we see, if you didn't come up with that household, you're like, man, I don't want my kids to go through that. I didn't want my kids to go through being the hurt. I felt a lot of hurt. That's what I felt. Like, man, why isn't my dad here? Why won't he come and be around? I talked to friends about it once I figured out what the subject was. They were like, yeah, Cleve, I acted out. trying to get his attention. Like, come on, let's do this. Be here. But now that I'm in this climate, I feel like I can't let my kids go through that. Right. So I think a lot of fathers nowadays who didn't have those fathers are feeling like, no, I'm going to be here no matter what. I'm going to figure out a way to do it. I often wonder for some of these guys who are considered deadbeats, are they trying, or is it they feel like they're in a difficult relationship with the mom that's making it difficult for them to even want to be around their kid, or I'm at a loss for why a father wouldn't want to be in his life, in a kid's life right now, in this climate. That's where I'm at right now.
I think is a combination of what Tedman said earlier. When you can't even take care of yourself, how can you take care of another human being, right? So if you're not stable in that correct mindset to be a parent, I mean, you're really going to do more damage than good. Who is ever ready to be a parent? I mean, you can read all the book that there is on the subject. When it comes time to be a parent, you kind of have to figure it out. When it comes to the deadbeat dads, I think it's easy. The easier option for them is to ignore the whole situation. So we at least know of a guy or heard of a guy within our social circles that is a deadbeat dad that doesn't take care of his responsibilities either financially or emotionally, doesn't have any type of relationship whatsoever with his children. And from those people that I'm thinking of, some of the individuals that would classify as a deadbeat dad that are in my mind, they simply act as if those children don't exist. Easier for them to move on and go on with their lives if they just compartmentalize those certain human beings into a category and then shove them away in the back of the closet and act like they don't exist. But I mean, that's just from what I observed from deadbeat fathers. I can't fathom it, personally myself, because when it comes down to taking care of certain things, if it's my responsibility, it's my responsibility. I'm going to take hold of it and I'm going to make sure I do my best and whatever it is. You just have certain individuals that do not want to own up to their responsibilities, and then the easiest option or easiest way out is to act like they don't exist.
It's very easy to do if you really think about it. If something ain't going right and you want to get out, you just leave. You know what I mean? And what most men, I won't say all men, but what most men were doing, at least when I was growing up, and some are still doing to this day, is that as soon as you figure that something's not working in the relationship that you're currently in, you walk away, right? You don't want to make things work, right? But it's not all your fault. You know what I mean? It could be something that's going on between you and your other half, you know what I mean? The lady. So if you guys are disagreeing on certain things, you think it's best for you to just actually eliminate yourself from the equation, get out of there, right? Now, just by thought and random, you're just going to say, you know what? She is already equipped to take care of the kids. So I'm out. Let me go get myself situated. And that actually just plays the same point with Tedman. Like most men are already going to say, look, I don't even have the time, nor the patience, nor any of that to raise no kids right now. You being a woman, you were already born with that. So you could take care of that. You know what I mean? Let me go get myself situated. And then once I'm situated, then I can either provide by sending you some form of payment or actually coming through and actually providing that way by actually trying to educate my son. Now, I see this a lot here in my a community that I'm in. And this is kid that's across the street. He's like 15, right? He lives with his mom, lives with his grandma. Now, his dad comes over once every other week, right? And he's outside and he's, sitting up there chopping up with him and stuff like that. And it looks like a really great conversation. But and the dude is so out of it, like he only going outside to talk to his pops just to say that he out there talking to him. Dad talking, laughing, everything. Dude looking left, looking right, ain't looking at his phone. He ain't even engaged. But you can always tell, like you can tell the dude, like he probably in his 40s, 50s. And he's like, yeah, man. So what that girl look like? I overheard a conversation the other day, and he's like, so what does she look like? And dude was like, she was cool, man. He was really, really straightforward. Like, man, Dad, I don't even really want to talk to you. You could tell that's what he wanted to tell him, but out of respect, he was like, this is my dad. I'm going to go ahead and let him talk. But man, get out of here. My grandma, my mom raised me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need you coming over here trying to do your part, but you come over once every other week, man. You better off at this point just getting out of my life. And a lot of men do that. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you this about, all right, so just playing devil's advocate. Mm-hmm. And my thoughts often go to some of my friends who Apollo said, we all know somebody.
We all know him.
How much is control a factor in some of these fathers not being there? And when I say control, I mean, I have people in my life, I'm not going to distinguish who, but they'll say something like, oh, these are my kids. Mm-hmm. When I don't have 50-50 custody and I have 75-25 of seeing my kids or talking to my kids because the mother is being difficult in some of these situations, is their reaction of, okay, pull back? Is that an acceptable reason for them to pull back?
Of course.
Okay, the mother's being difficult. She's not allowing me to do a certain thing, be the father that I want to be. Mm-hmm. So that takes control away from you. So I pull back. So this is me being devil's advocate and asking you guys, what is his role should be now? Now that he's in that situation, how should he respond?
Now,
I was about to say, let's bring Tedman in. I know Tedman, your oldest daughter, isn't your biological daughter. It's your stepdaughter. So how does that play in the role? Is her father actually in the picture? If not, how does that factor in? Does your wife keep her away from her biological father?
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, she lives in Cleveland with her biological father now.
Dang.
Yeah. So my daughter will, especially after Jalen was born, my oldest son, she wasn't getting the attention that she needed to do well. Me and Juana we had to divide our attention because we have a newborn and a 9-year-old. There's going to be conflicts there. It's a brand new child. It's like having two first children or two individual children. So at that point, her father was not present at all. And there was animosity in my heart towards him. We made every attempt to let him see her, to say, hey, you can see her anytime you want. You just need to come get her, or you need to provide the airline ticket. That's all we ask.
Which is fair.
Because at the time, he wasn't doing anything. He had gotten out of the military. He wasn't providing financially. He spoke to her, I think, twice on 2 of her birthdays because his birthday is the day before hers.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah. So
he's remembering.
Yeah, it's not hard, but it's interesting that he missed calling her on a couple of birthdays. It's like, why? What do you have going on? I have a better understanding of his life, but we weren't being difficult. Now, this is my experience. We weren't being difficult. Juana was not being difficult. She wanted him to be present because we understand that a child that has both parents in their lives do way better. It's science. It's not rhetoric. It's not magic. It just happens that way. And she was blessed with an extra dad, because I became dad, not father, but dad, But things happened. We hit a boiling point, and I had to say, hey, you gotta go with your dad, because if you don't, I'm not gonna be able to function properly. I've always been self-aware enough to know when I have a problem. So we sent her there, and now she's got 2 adults in the house that focus all their attention on her, and now she's like, it's too much. With women being difficult, I would say that if there are lies, there is some truth to every lie. There's some part of something you said that was absolutely true. Now, if you have such a bad time with this other parent being the man that you don't want them to be around, then you, the dad, you have to look at yourself and say, hey, what am I doing? Now, this is something I learned in college. I had a conversation with a bunch of other guys, and they all pointed at me and said, this is the problem. And I realized that after about the 5th person, because it was like 20 people in the room, after the 5th person, I realized that I was the problem. It wasn't them, it was me. Because and I go back to this statement a lot, if 50 people say you're a crackhead and you're the only one saying you're not, you do crack. You do too much crack, and it's a problem for everybody else. I won't say you're a crackhead. However, you do it, and you do it too much. So I have to step back and look at myself and say, hey, what did I do wrong? I did A, B, and C, and those things are bad. However, if I can counter A, B, and C with D, E, and F, then I need to sit down with the mother and say, hey, I understand that these things aren't the best, but that does not warrant you keeping me from my children. And I won't do the same if I'm the dad that has custody of my children. I won't do that, because that's not fair to you. You're not being fair to me unless you can have other people say that everything that you're saying is absolutely true and nothing that I say about myself is true. Like, it's a village, right? If the whole village saying that person is not really good for the environment of raising children, then you either need to change or accept it and go away. It's that simple. Okay. It's that simple. That's how that's humanity. We change or accept the inevitable.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'll say, understanding that there are good women and good men who are about the go ahead and let my kids see their spot, whoever it was, the dad or the mom. I want you to come see my kid. Now, there are women or men who are vindictive in the cases where they're hurt because the new person is seeing someone else. Oh, you're not going to have my kid around this person right here. Or, like I said, I'm playing devil's advocate. What are we telling those dads who are in that situation that don't have control and feel a certain type of way about not having that control?
Just real quick.
Go ahead.
Just real quick. I want to answer real quick. When you have a situation like that where, let's say, the woman is trying to take control and the man is doing everything in their power to at least do like a 50-50 split or equality, right? You got to keep in mind the easiest way to do it is try to have some type of conversation with the woman, right? But if they're trying to take control, that next option is very difficult. And that's when you're going legally.
Yes.
When you start to go legally, it gets very expensive because you have to do things the right way. The first thing you got to do is hire a representation. So some sort of lawyer. Now, on an average, a good lawyer is going to run you $400 an hour. That's on average, depending on which county you live. So now the average father is going to look at that and be like, man, I don't even have the money or the time and patience to even fight this. So I'm not playing devil's advocate, but I'm trying to, see both sides. If a woman is actually being very challenging, it's very easy, even in my opinion, to be like, you know what, forget it. I'm going to just say forget it and walk away because there's a lot of people who actually lose to the court system and still don't pay child support. There's a lot of them. There's several ways to go under the loop, you know what I mean? And actually you can get around without actually doing that. But there are a lot of times where the men don't want that. You know what I mean? They actually want to actually do what they can, but outside of the legal system, you know what I mean? But they also fail to actually do that because of the controlling other half. And that could play both sides. You know what I mean? It could be the man and the woman. So the bad part about that is that when the man and the woman, the mom and the father are funking, it's really hurting the actual kids. It's not actually hurting the mom or the dad. But they don't see that because their communication is so out of whack that they can't actually seem to agree on just coming together to do what's right for the kids.
If a guy downloads this podcast and he's considered a estranged father from a divorce, whether it be deadbeat, whatever, he has a reason in his head that is feasible for whatever position he is in right now. So talking to him, because he's sitting there like, wait, you don't even know my baby mama like that. Because if you knew my baby mama, you'll be the same person I'm being right now. You know what I mean? So that's what he's sitting there saying. So how are we addressing him and his issues with the mother that's pushing him outside of the home or outside of the kid's life?
So I'll try to be the devil's advocate on this one. You have, on the flip side of the coin, you have several fathers are raising their children single, right? So, and it's growing. So at some point in time within the last generation or so, there's been almost like a paradigm shift where the women now are saying, hey, I got things to do. I don't want this to hold me down. And the men are now kind of taking the ball and running with it and stepping up and saying, hey, I'll own this. And they're raising their children by themselves. Right. So in the more commonplace where we used to see, at least in our upbringing, in our generation, where you see the women raising single-handedly raising the children and being, scarred and wounded because hurt people, right? So they're hurt that they're left, to do this by themselves. So if the man now, he wants to come around and try to help, no, go away. I have this one thing I could hold against you potentially, and I'm going to use it for whatever it's worth. So you see, we all seen the baby mama drama or the baby daddy situation where they're fighting back and forth and using the children as a pawn in the game. You can say and point the finger all you want to say, hey, yeah, this the woman is acting this way or the male is acting this way. But if it is your responsibility, a human being that shares your blood that you brought into this world, and now they are a part of you sitting there that needs to be nourished and nurtured to one day let them go out alone and unafraid to face the world, you have to do your part. Now, if the parent, for whatever reason, is blocking you, then you have to come to some type of agreement, wherever that may be, so that you guys can share in the child rearing process. Now, you have multiple different things that are going to, make that situation unique and individual to the circumstances. You have people that work out of state. that don't physically live in the same location. You have people that just can't meet eye to eye. They're always going to be in that friction point, whatever it's going to be, but have to come to some type of conclusion that, hey, we have to do what's better for for this living human being, kind of like the Swiss Beats situation and that blended family. There has to be some point where you guys reach an agreement to co-parent in order to make sure that you're bringing this child up, and you're bringing up this child in the best way that you can. And to what Joe said earlier, you have a father out there that he sees and witnesses trying to do his part, wherever it may be, because we don't know the background to that father. My father may have been told, hey, you only get this one day, this one time a year, no more, no less, where he tried to petition to get full custody, then got slapped down with this little easy 10%, 20% of time with his child. And the child may hold that against him, like, hey, how come you didn't fight for me more? How come you didn't go the extra length? You don't want me? Am I a waste of time to you? And they resent that individual for their entire life, not knowing the full picture because the parent didn't want to paint the other parent in the bad light. So there's multiple things that it could be out there that we just don't know. And the situation always differs. At the end of the day, the way I look at it, at least my opinion is, if you are a parent, especially a black father here in the United States, you have to go the extra length. You have to go above and beyond. So if it is your responsibility, you have to own it and do the necessary step. You have to take the necessary steps to make sure that you are parenting your child, because you don't want your blood, your seed out there in the world being parented by somebody else that's not going to have their best interests at heart.
And just one last thing to that too, Cleve. If just to go off your story, there's nothing wrong with someone, if the court system telling you no. To me, if the court system told me no, I'm gonna come back and represent myself. You know what I mean? I'm coming back because that one no is going to fuel me to be like, okay, now if I really want to be in my kid's life, you can't tell me no twice. Period. You can tell me no once, but I came in half-assed. I came in unprepared. This second time I come to court, I'm prepared. I'm about to get on the internet, do my own research. I'm really going to dive into where when I come back to this court, I'm going to represent myself, and I'm going to actually make sure that I take 50% custody or 100%. There's men out there who continue to do that. When it comes to legal fees in courts, you got two options. One, you can actually represent yourself, but you better know what the hell you're talking about. Yeah. Or you're going to pay someone to represent you. Now, this is with everything. This is with business. This is with life. You know what I mean? Just like getting a coach. You don't know how to do something, you're going to get a coach to do it, right? But then if you go to the gym and all of a sudden you no longer need that coach, you're going to make sure that you're disciplined enough to keep going to that gym to actually lose weight or whatever to achieve your goal. Well, that can be the same thing for this. If you want your kids in your life and this other half, this woman is blocking you, as soon as that judge says, no, you cannot, you're only getting them 10%, which is 1 day a week. I'm coming on this internet. I'm researching every topic I can on how to do it. I'm talking to people. It's going to be a topic of conversation every time I get until I understand fully. My next court date, when I come back, you're going to give me my 50%.
But Joe, so you're talking from a standpoint of privilege almost, because you can speak that, hey, you have the resources in order to fight. I want to say there's a lot of brothers out there that may not have those resources. If they can't even pay child support, whatever that may be, they probably don't have the resources in order to fight. Then you're also talking about will. So you're talking about resources and then the will to fight. Some brothers may want and or like to be in the lives of the child and not be considered a deadbeat father, but with a little resistance keeps them out the game. The first initial resistance to them trying to be in the lives of their children, they get pushed back either from the baby mother or whatever have you. They go, well, maybe it's not meant to be, because it's considerable amount of resources and time that they would have to push forth effort in order to make that dream come true. And to them, it may be value, but one, they may not know, the proper way of going about doing it, and or no one around them knows how to go about doing it. And then you have the lack of resources. So I think there's multiple levels to barriers that keeps potential or deadbeat fathers in that potential realm from not being a deadbeat father and progressing to be an actual decent father and dad. But there's a lot of barriers in the way. We're speaking from college educated men. You know what I mean? That have resources and everything and a little bit know-how. All of us are in a fraternity organization, so you know what it means to keep pushing and over to cross the burning sand. So we were speaking from a different place. You got to keep in mind the common man that has, now is told, hey, you have a responsibility, you need to own it. And then they get some first initial pushback. What are they going to do? Are they going to fold and say, oh, I guess it ain't meant to be. I'm just going to go over here and work this 9 to 5, give you my little money, and that will be that. Or are they going to steam through ahead and say, hey, no, I want to be present. I want to be in this person's life. They are my responsibility. I'm not going to stand for anything less than at least half of the time of that child. And then I would even argue now it's easier, especially with all this connectivity, right, to still be present in a child's life. So say, for instance, you get slapped down, hey, you're going to have weekends once a month. You can still be on the internet. You can still be on the phone calling them, checking in with them every single day or whatnot. You can still, drop IMs to them, Snapchat, do some Instagram. You can go back and forth on social media, especially at a certain age with them, right?
Right.
So without involving the other partner, it's so much, up to a certain age. So I think the will is there if brothers are willing to get out there and do the work. But keep in mind, not everybody's created equal. We're almost speaking from a point of privilege that we aren't hurting right now, especially during the pandemic, for resources. We have a college education. We know basic rules and laws to navigate this. And I want to say the average brother out there probably doesn't. The average brother listening was like, hey, what do you say? What about the courts? Yeah, they may be taking notes right now for all we know. You know what I mean?
See, but just to argue that though, real quick, just so I won't forget my train of thought, just to argue that if you're a grown adult, let's just say you're 18 years old, and you have access to a cell phone, which means you have access to the internet, then you have access to resources. Period, point blank. It's what you do with your time after that. If it's what you're doing with your time, everybody has 24 hours in a day. No matter, as long as you're here on earth, you got 24 hours a day. Most people who make the below, let's say that the average minimum wage has a cell phone. And everyone who has a cell phone, whether they're working at McDonald's or whatever, how much, we're not even going to go on the topic on what you make, but there are people who are on unemployment. There are people who are working a bare minimum, making the minimum wage, and they have a cell phone, right? If you have a cell phone, you have access to the internet, period. So if you have access to the internet, you have resources. It's what you do with your time. So that
will, like Paulo said, it's the will of some of these gentlemen who don't know about the will, or how can I say it?
I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, they don't have it because it's almost like a fad. First of all, let me say I agree with everything you guys both are saying. Mm-hmm. I'm like I said, I'm playing devil's advocate for that guy listening, saying, but I do this, but I do that, and I'm still receiving this. That's where I'm coming from. But and like I said, hopefully he's learning. But if I never grew up with that will, or never seen that will before of how to fight, how do I go about? How do you manufacture that will to I have a cell phone, let me do it this way? Where's that will going to come from if I've never seen it? A lot of people, like me being a father right now, is all guessing. I'm guessing 100% because not that my stepfather wasn't there, because he provided for me and he attempted to be there emotionally. I just wasn't receiving it because I was hung up on my father not being there. You know what I mean? So right now, everything I'm doing is just guesswork. If I discipline my kids, I hope that worked. Because it's 100% guesswork. So that gentleman, and it's almost like a fad, like to say, my baby mama tripping. You know what I mean? So what you're saying, I do get, Joe, and I'm in 100% agreement with you. That's coming from us as college educated, fraternity, military members, guys who, and not just that, you probably played a sport where you had a coach. Some of these dudes don't even play sports no more. Video games is what it is. Right. Video games and girls. So if the video games, after the video game, I'm going to go talk to her and she get pregnant and I'm 18, she a baby, and now what? Now the kid 3 years old, I can't call her or be on the internet with a 3-year-old. You know what I mean? So now where are we going with this as far as telling them how or the importance, or explaining the importance of it? of trying your damnedest to get to that kid.
I would say that if you are that determined to be a part of that child's life, then you know what the will is.
Okay.
And if the mother won't allow you to be on the phone with that child, then you call the mother every day until she is at her wit's end with you trying to get involved and in touch with your child's life. I don't have to have a relationship with you. I'm trying to get to my son or my daughter. Like, if we all know what it is, because everybody in life goes through a period that makes them better than they were the day before. Everybody has one of those. Now, they're not different. I tell people all the time, I'm suburban children. I don't know the streets like that. I grew up in Columbus, Georgia. It's a beautiful place. Well, when I was a kid, it was a beautiful place. You know, middle income family. It's not as good as it was, but a middle income family. You know, my dad was also in the military, so I don't know the streets like that. I asked my dad if I could move to Miami, and my dad told me last year, he said, I don't think you would have made it in Miami. And I agree with him. I absolutely 100% agree with him. But that does not mean I don't have the persistence to get what it is that I want or need to make everything around me better, including myself. And you know what? You have to be selfish when it comes to your children. If you want to see them, you be selfish. Hey, you're not going to stand in my way to see my children. You're not going to do that. And I'm not going to let you do that. And if there's something I need to work on, then I'm going to work on it. But you're going to understand that I'm coming. You need to move. There's nothing you can do to stop me from seeing my kid, from being there. And you know what? If you don't know the law, if you don't know what it is, then you ask one of those older brothers in your neighborhood, what do I do? Because the likelihood of you being the only person like that where you live, probably low.
Yep.
And there's somebody else that is dealing with that. We need to lean on each other. Black fatherhood is not the individual. It's all of us. And through all of us, I am imparting these lessons on my children. So all 6 of us on this call right now, we are giving each other information. We're taking information from each other. And hopefully we're going to give it out to the world. And the world says, you know what? I can call one of those 6 people and say, I have a problem. And they say, okay, well, this is what I did. Now, like my father always tells me, I can't tell you I can't make you do anything. I can only suggest things to you. But if that's what you want, then this is what you can do. This is one avenue you can take. And that avenue can lead to a different street or a dead end or roadblock that you go through. You don't jump over it or go under it, you go through it. So to say that a woman is being difficult, a woman is only being as difficult as we allow them to be, especially when it comes to fatherhood. No woman is going to get in the way of my children. No man will get in the way of me being a good influence on my children. Ever will that happen. And if you realize that at 18, 3 years later, when you turn 21, that you really want to be a part of your kid's life, then ask questions, make mistakes, own those mistakes, and become a better person. You know, so that way that woman or that man, they don't lord that over you. Oh, well, you were 18. When you were 18, you were doing this, that, and the third. I haven't done that in 3 years, so that's not a good excuse anymore.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to be better. I am better, so move out of my way.
We will continue the conversation next week. I'll leave you with a dad quote. Today's dad quote comes from quotemaster.org. It reads, "A deadbeat thinks of the person in the mirror, not the child in the shadow." Author unknown. Make sure you join our Facebook group, Brothers in Fatherhood. Follow us on Instagram at Brothers, the letter N, Fatherhood. And on Twitter at Bros, the letter N, Fatherhood. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Brothers in Fatherhood. Thanks for listening to the Brothers in Fatherhood podcast. Before we go, show some love for your favorite new podcast by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Then stay tuned for next week when we'll continue this conversation on Deadbeat Dads. We would love to hear from you. Drop the Brotherhood a line. If you have a subject you want us to tackle or you simply want your voice to be heard, please send all comments and questions to the Brotherhood at brothersinfatherhood@gmail.com. Stay blessed and stay safe.